So welcome. My name is Sharon Colvin. I'm the Youth Service Consultant for the Vermont Department of Libraries. This is a course on dumping Dewey, and thank you for joining me if you are live or if you're watching this recorded. I want to start out just by pointing out some resources for you. If you are on the phone or if you're unable to see my screen, I will send you a recording of this video so that you can see everything that I point out and be able to find all these resources on our website. This is our website here, libraries.vermont.gov. If you go to Services for Vermont Libraries, and then there's a link for children and teens here on the left or in the center here. If you click on that, you get to my page with everything that you need. And right here is the Youth Services Toolkit. This right here should contain everything that you need to do your job. And if there's ever anything that you think I should add, let me know. I'd be happy to do that. Right now, under continuing education, we have these self-paced learning modules. Right here, dumping Dewey, that's what we're working on today. The slides and the recording of this presentation will go right here in this page, along with links to all of these different resources for you, and it won't go anywhere. So you'll have access to this afterwards, and I will keep updating it as the world changes. So I want to make sure that you know about that. So I'm keeping track of attendance, but it's just 5 of us right now, which is fine. You snooze, you lose, right? All right. So let's start out. Tell me a little bit about what libraries you're from and have any of you guys tried any of this Dewey hybrid or dumping Dewey stuff? Have you thought about it, or is this completely new to you? I know I've talked to Helena about it. Anyone else?
Hi, this is Wendy from Brownell, Wendy Johnson. And can you hear me all right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. We have not tried it yet, but we have 2 departments. Allison would like to try this in our adult department, in our movie section. And then Mary Graff in the youth department would like to try to do this with our picture books.
Fantastic.
So we're very excited to see how this is going to work and just to start with those areas.
Great. Anyone else? Angel says she's from Grafton and has not tried this yet. That's great. Okay. Well, let's start talking a little bit about what is the Dewey Decimal System. I found this awesome picture, if you can see my screen, and it's got all the different Dewey numbers and what they correspond to. We all have seen those fancy posters in the children's room, trying to explain to children what the Dewey Decimal System is. So why do we have it? Oh, Rebecca says she's from Stratford and she's thinking about it for the children's picture book area. Fantastic. You're in the right place. So what is the Dewey Decimal System for? Why do we have it? Why did Dewey come up with it? Any ideas? I know it's early, guys, but come on. If we didn't have it, what would we have? We'd have a big mess on the floor, right? We'd have everything either in alphabetical order or, my favorite, organized by color, because that would be fun. And we wouldn't be able to find anything, right? So Dewey created this system a long time ago, and he was kind of his vision of the world in terms of what needed to be represented there. Now, I think it was in the 1800s when he created this. Back then, if you look at like the religion section, there's an enormous number range for Christianity, and there's like 1 number dedicated to Islam, and I don't even think paganism is in there. And they've had to add huge cutter numbers to be able to shove them in there, kind of shoehorn these other pieces of information into his system. And the reason for that is because when he was doing this, he didn't think it was necessary. One of my favorite things about the Dewey Decimal System is the zeros. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Oh, yeah, this one right here, Generalities. I love showing children the zeros because that's where all the randomness goes. And I love this section because it's full of stuff that Dewey didn't know existed, or he didn't know was important, or that he thought was kind of crazy talk. So aliens, UFOs, computers, journalism, all this kind of crazy stuff. The Guinness Book goes in here. All the like random stuff gets shoved into the zeros. And the reason for that is because Dewey he didn't know that these things existed. The problem with that is that it doesn't make sense in our worldview, because having the Guinness Book of World Records next to an index or a book on journalism isn't ideal in most of our libraries. And also, it's really strange that there's computers next to alien encounters, although kids find it really, really funny. So I have this awesome picture here of a bookstore, and I like this picture because if you can't see it, there's a section called biography, and then there's a section next to it called tragic lives, which I just think is hilarious. But it's indicative of what we see when we go into a bookstore. Now, how many of you guys love bookstores? I bet a lot of us do, right? I love going into bookstores. And they have these kind of thematic sections, and you can just march right up to them. And you know that if you're looking for a book on someone with a tragic life, you just go right up to the tragic life section. And obviously in that bookstore, that is an important, a popular section for whatever reason. And then you go into another bookstore and there might be a comic, comic biographies or whatever. And so every bookstore is a little bit different in that way. But it is kind of nice and people really like them. And if you watch what's happening in libraries, a lot of it's mirroring what's happening in bookstores, making them a little more user-friendly. And of course, in bookstores, you see a lot of face-out displays, which sometimes we don't have room for. But look how pretty that is. So we start thinking about how we organize things. If I can figure out which way this goes. Okay, this table here I thought was really good. And it definitely reflects some of these problems with Dewey and the reason that we have this push towards a bookstore model. So people have trouble with the online catalog. Now, in a lot of our little libraries, people may not even use the online catalog. They'll just come straight to you, right? But if you have a larger collection, some of those numbers are just too big. And people like to do things on their own, and they like to just march right up to the section that they want, like Tragic Lives, and get what they want. And that isn't always possible in a library. Sometimes you have to look in multiple places. My favorite section is environmental sciences, where you have to look in both the 300s and the 600s to get that information. And unless you understand that it's both science and social science and politics, and that's kind of, college level thinking. It's really confusing. And when you're serving children, it's hard to explain to them that, yes, there's information on Greek myths, both in religion and in history. And the reason for that is because it's both history and Dewey says religion too. And that's all so confusing to people. And so that's why some of this is coming up. And that's why people have started thinking about how they can do things in a little more user-friendly fashion. So the first big library that did this is Darien, Connecticut. Now, the one thing I want to caution you against is don't ever compare yourself to Darien, Connecticut. And if you're listening to this, just don't do it. Darien, Connecticut is a large, very wealthy library. Anywhere in Connecticut is just not going to be something. It's not going to be very similar to Vermont. It's a big library. They had a lot of money. They have a lot of staff. However, they came up with some interesting ideas. So what they did is they come up with these 9 concepts or different areas for their, they called it the first 5 years picture book collection. So imagine your picture books. And what they did was they came up with these different categories. So you have celebrations, which is all about different holidays, all those annoying books that we never know what to do with. Although I maintain that sometimes hiding the Christmas books during the summer isn't a bad idea, but that's how they do it there. Concepts, things like ABCs and shapes and numbers, folk and fairy tales. They pull these books out of the 398s or 298s and they stick them here. And one of the things that we'll talk about later, but our libraries are finding is that they circulate better if you put them with the picture books. A book on growing up, a section on growing up, things like friendship and family and going to school, things like that. Nature, of course, but this is all picture books, right? So it's going to be things like frogs and animals, and you might even have a section in each of these sections for fiction and nonfiction. So for example, in the nature section, this lends itself to it really well. You might have a section in nature that's talking animals, and then at the end, there might be picture books that are nonfiction as well. And I'll show you some examples of that in a little bit. So these are overarching categories, but within those categories, there might be even more breakdown. Rhymes and songs, these are some of those books that also end up getting shelved in nonfiction that they can pull out and could circulate a little bit better. And this also you can use for story time, which is always good. Stories, so things, well, this is where I start to get cautious. Well, first, transportation, fantastic. Everyone needs a transportation section. However, there's these two sections here, stories and favorites. And these two I really want to caution you about. And here's why. Stories, you need to have a really good definition for what you're putting in these categories. Now, favorites is kind of, I've seen this kind of pan out in different libraries, and what it ends up being is a catch-all, like a dumping ground for things that they don't go anywhere else. And the same thing can happen with stories. I don't think that's ideal. So I would caution you about that. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying you might want to make some definitions for what goes in stories and what goes in favorites. Because what if you leave? What if you retire or you leave and someone else comes back and suddenly, this, Fancy Nancy isn't a favorite anymore. Maybe she hates Fancy Nancy or whatever. And then does it get moved out of favorites? Like, whose favorites are we talking about? So really, you got to be careful with that. And we'll see how some libraries have adopted parts of this program. So in addition, they have these other subsections for parents. So parenting books are not going to go in here. So you're not going to find, in growing up, you might find potty training books, and you might find books about death and dying. But they're going to be the picture book versions. But the books for the parents are going to be in a separate section. Now, different libraries have different opinions about that. In my last library, we did not do this situation. We did kind of a hybrid situation. And what we did was we pulled these growing up books and put them with the parent books. And so what we ended up with was the books on potty training for the grown-ups next to a bunch of picture books on potty training, so that parents could just go to that shelf and pick up a bunch of books for them to read and some big books for little Susie to read as well. That worked well in our community. Every community is a little different. And then, of course, the Learn to Read section, or the Easy Reader section, is a whole other can of worms that we can talk about later. So they called these glades, which I think is hysterical, but that's what they called them. You can call them anything you want. This is not proprietary. This is not copyrighted. And I want to make sure that you take ownership of your collection. You guys, as a librarian, you have a lot of power. You get to use it. Just because somebody else does it some way doesn't mean you have to. So let's see. I keep going backwards. I'm having trouble this morning. So the other thing I want to talk to you about is genre labels. So when you move into fiction and to older kids' books, you get into the question of genre labels and genre labeling. There have been several, especially school libraries, and I think the reason school libraries have taken this over is because, number one, a lot of elementary schools have genre assignments. So, like, every kid has to read, a historical fiction book this month or whatever. And so having them labeled or shelved and altogether makes it easy. The other thing is that when you work in a school, a lot of times you have a couple of months in the summer when every single one of your books is on the shelf. Now, that never happens in the public library. You always have books out. And so anytime you take on one of these big reorganization projects, you have to keep that in mind. It's always going to be like a work in progress. Like, you're going to feel like you're never finished. And in the schools, they have the luxury of, every book is on the shelf. And so they can look at their collection as a whole and reorganize it. I have mixed feelings about genre stickers. I think it's completely up to you. However, I do caution you when you're moving up to teen books, even like tween middle school books as well, because there's a lot of genre blending happening. And so, for example, you might read a book that is, like, right now I'm reading a book that is a fantasy science fiction adventure. It's about the future. And these alien bugs have invaded and they are chasing people around and killing them. And so it's definitely adventure. It's definitely science fiction. It's probably more science fiction than fantasy, but it could also be horror. And so what label do you put on it? And a lot of people have solved that problem by buying multiple copies and putting them in multiple sections. That isn't realistic for most of us, especially if you're in a small Vermont library. Buying multiple copies, especially of a book that may not be that popular, is kind of silly. So I caution you against that. And then what happens if you need to put multiple stickers on something? You don't want to cover up the entire spine because the spines on children's books are actually pretty nice. And is a kid going to pick up a book that has a gazillion stickers on it? I don't know. And then the other question is, what about when kids come in and they are hardcore science fiction readers and they will only read science fiction, and you want to give them something that's maybe a little more adventure than science fiction or a little bit more fantasy than science fiction? Are the labels going to turn them off? I don't know. Like, is a romance label going to turn a boy off from reading it? I worry about these things. So it's up to you. We're not going to be talking a lot about the fiction today. We're going to be talking a lot about examples of mostly, excuse me, picture books. But if you're thinking about doing some genre shelving with your older books, I want you to think carefully about it. There are some things that are easy to pull out, like graphic novels, easy peasy, right? Some of us intershelve them and some of us pull them out. Totally up to you. You can sticker them and keep them on the shelf with everything else, or you can put them on a separate shelf. That seems pretty clear cut. Maybe pulling out, well, I love the Western one. Not a lot of Western in youth fiction. But like mysteries, for example, it doesn't work that well in youth fiction. It works really well, it doesn't work that well in adult fiction. A lot of times you end up splitting authors. So you have authors that are in multiple sections, which can be really frustrating if you're a reader of a certain author. But with kids, there's, you don't have a lot of kid sleuths. I mean, you have Nate the Great. But other than that, you don't have a lot of kids sleuths. So usually mystery is carried into another genre. So it'll be a mystery fantasy or a mystery adventure or a mystery humor, like the Gordon Corman books. So, like, are you going to turn somebody off? These are the things that I think about. So I want to pass them on to you. So I'm not the only one worrying about them. All right, I want to show you some examples of some people who have put this together. And I'm going to tell you which libraries they are so that if you are near them, you should go and take a look at them. There's also videos of some of these libraries on the resource page, and you can get a little inside tour of their library so that you can kind of visit them without leaving your library. So this is the Manchester Community Library. Before I show you this, I will tell you Manchester is probably one of the biggest, fanciest libraries in the state. It's brand new. They just moved in November. So they had a blank slate to work with. Not everyone has that benefit, of being able to walk into an empty room and just make it their own. And then they got to organize the collection however they wanted. So, I do want to show you what they're doing, but this is crazy stuff. Okay, they also were very fortunate to actually make a field trip to Darien, Connecticut, to see what they do. So they did take a lot of their work straight from Connecticut. You do not have to do that. I have done all of this for you. And again, don't feel like you have to take any one project on completely. You can pick and choose from these different ideas and make it your own. So these are the glades at the Manchester Community Library. It is really striking and beautiful if you ever do have a chance to go there. This is how they split up the adult nonfiction, and it involves something called Lives, which is biography. And so you can see kind of the different places that books would go. They tried to make sure that each section encompass the Dewey numbers, and I'm pretty sure they left the Dewey numbers on the books. Let me take a look. Yes, they did. That's another thing I really would like to caution you against. Some libraries, and I will not name names, but you may know of them, put them in sections and take off the Dewey numbers. Please don't do that. If you decide that the system isn't working for you and you want to go back to regular Dewey, if you have the Dewey numbers off, it's going to be very hard. And second, it's really hard to put them in order if you don't do that. So, for example, this is actually, okay, so here, this is time, so this is true crime, so maybe not the best section example, but it's a picture I had. But let's say this was history, or this is live. Let's say this was a history section of Times. If you keep them in the Dewey number, you keep the World War I books together, you keep the World War II books together, you keep the Vietnam War books together, you keep the, Charlemagne books together, and that way people who like subgenres of that section can find their interests. If you take off the Dewey numbers, you end up putting them in alphabetical order, and that is just ridiculous. That is the only hard and fast piece of advice I'm going to give you, and that is do not ditch Dewey completely. There is a point to it, and if you ditch it completely, your library is going to be a mess. So you want to make sure that you still have that fundamental category system, because these big broad categories don't cover everything, and in some cases they cover too much to be able to make sense of it. Now this may not work for you for your adult nonfiction, and some libraries don't have large adult nonfiction collections, so it's completely up to you, but this is how they did it. And they have different sections, and you can see they use clear colored tape on the side, on the tops, to indicate the different glade. And I like the clear tape. I don't know where they got it, but I'm sure you can talk to people at Manchester. I like that because you can still read the title through it. Again, there's that question about, are you ruining the pretty spine? That is kind of your advertising for the book. So you want to make sure that you think about things like that. They also have, and I don't know if you can see it, they put the label right here in addition to the color. So they use something called universal design. Universal design is something, so if you go to a parking garage, do you ever notice that it doesn't just say, especially in the airport, it doesn't just say your level number or your the level of your parking spot. It also has a color and probably a symbol. Actually, if you go to Wegmans, which I know isn't around here, but it's Massachusetts, they crack me up. Or Disneyland, Disneyland cracks me up. So each section has a character. So there's a cartoon character and a number associated with it. Or Wegmans has a vegetable. So I like to park in broccoli because I think it's funny. So it's broccoli and it's green and it's also level 3. And the reason people do that is because people remember information in different ways. So some of us are very visual, and so we'll remember the broccoli. Some of us are very number oriented, and so we need the number. And some of us have no memory and have to take a picture, like me. So this is a way, it's just of multiple representations of information. So you have a color, help your shelvers, but then down here there's also a label that says times and true crime. And that means that it's in the big glade of times and it's in this little section of true crime. And each of them has that. Now that's a lot of labels. I want to caution you against putting too many labels on there. Oh, can barely hear me? Oh no, that's terrible. Is this new? Did it just happen or has it been like that the whole time? Cutting out? That's terrible. Okay, let me try plugging in my headphones. Anybody else having that problem? Can you hear me?
Yes, I had problems.
Sorry, can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes, better.
Okay, good.
Better.
Well, we're going to hope that this improves it. Sorry about that. Little commercial break. All right, so I wanted to show you what they did in the children's room. Now this, I visited Manchester right after they moved in. So it was like, I don't know, December, January. So this is before they were able to put up the fancy signs, but I like this. They use Wordles. I love Wordles. So this is a way of kind of showing the kids what's in those different sections. So this was the tales section that they took from the Darien Glades, and it says folk tales, fairy tales, fables, and then up here there's like, little words that the kids can use, and they also have little artwork that helps, and then sample books. And then you'll see, and this was fixed, don't worry. They had just put this up here. Environment is misspelled, which is, it's fine. So up here, rhymes and songs, same thing. And you can see they used fun stickers for the kids. So they used some genre stickers. I think there's actually a science sticker on the environment one. And rhymes and songs, they just have a striped sticker. So you can do whatever you want. You could go to a school supply store and put, silver stars on the rhymes and songs books or red dots. You can do whatever you want. Whatever works for you is fine. You don't need to spend a ton of money. And printing out Wordles is a great way of showcasing your sections and showing the kids what they're doing. St. Johnsbury is another one that has done this. It's changed a little bit because a new children's librarian has come in and Adele is working with it. But they have these signs all over the library, and they have a different color sticker associated with each one of them. So they have, they call this one growing and history. It's a lot of the same stuff, but they just put the different level, the different stickers. It's a pretty small space, so not a lot of stuff. So speaking of small spaces, one of the libraries, the smallest libraries that I think has done this is Cutler in Plainfield. And if you're ever in Plainfield, you should definitely check it out. She has put these clear stickers on her books and has managed to squeeze it into a space like the size of my office, which is pretty amazing. And it seems to be working out pretty well for her. She was supposed to be here to talk to you guys today, but she had to go to a doctor appointment, so we forgive her. So Luna is a great resource for this. She took her little baby library and reorganized the whole thing. It's a tight squeeze. but she did manage to do it. And those little signs are just the cutest. She has them everywhere. Another giant project, and unfortunately I didn't get a chance to take pictures of the final project, but I do have a video that you guys can watch. Kathy Dulac worked really hard reorganizing her entire picture book section, and she put together these awesome pictures, little signs about each section. So this one's all about me, and so she has these cute little like emoticons, and then, you know, parts of the body. And so in her growing up section, and this is really important if you're going to do this, you need to define your section. So her section is body parts, emotions, family, relationships, nutrition and health, and going to school. So this is a really clear way to show what's in there. And then she had these signs made, and she had a local artist, somebody who was a library patron, made these for her. And this was pretty amazing. So he made these awesome signs for each section. And this is kind of the official language: children's experiences, relationships, and important milestones. And then they hung them from the ceiling so that they could see where each section was. So that when you walk into their library, and again, if you have the chance to go to Milton, it's very exciting. You walk in and you can just beeline right for the section that you want. It's totally up to you. So there's also a video of Kathy talking about her section, her library, in the resources, and you can see that. You can see her talking about some of her advice for people about, you know, what she did. She decided to just do the picture book section. And one of the things that she talks about, which I think is worth mentioning twice, is that she really worries about doing anything beyond just picture books. Now, in her sections, she has both fiction and nonfiction, but it's all picture books. So, for example, in the growing up section, she has, you know, the story kind of stuff, but then she also has the nonfiction, you know, what's happening to my body kind of stuff in there, and they're kind of separated just by a bookend, and they have the Dewey Numbers on them. And so you can get both fiction and nonfiction right there in one shelf. However, she doesn't want to do it for the older kids' materials, and the reason for that, and I think this is wise, is that she worries that if kids don't learn how to use the Dewey Decimal System, they're going to have trouble transferring those skills when they get to school. And so when they go to middle school and high school, or they go to other libraries around the world, they're not going to know how to use them. And so she really wants to make sure that kids learn how to use the Dewey Decimal System and, you know, a library system, and how to search the catalog and how to look for numbers. And I think that point is well taken, especially when kids go to college. You know, there's no bookstore model happening in the colleges, as far as I know. It's all, you know, Library of Congress and Dewey. So kids are going to eventually have to use that. And so if we make it too easy all through their lives, it could, I don't know. So anyway, she's very passionate about it, and it's worth thinking about. So Deborah Rawson and Thad again also wanted to join us but wasn't able. Thad has done something really interesting, and I think this is worth exploring. So what he did is he only pulled out 4 sections: nature, concept, growing up, and transportation. And what he decided, and I think this is kind of brilliant, especially since he has a very small space, is he identified the sections that are the most used, the most popular. So he decided that those concept books, ABCs and numbers, transportation, of course, we all know how popular those are, animals and nature, and then the growing up books, of course. And what he did was that he identified those books but did not move them. So if you look, I think I have a picture. Okay, so here's the coding section. These pictures are just throughout the library, and the books are all interfiled. It's just that some of them have stickers on them. And I don't know if I have a picture. I don't have a picture. But if you look at his shelves, you'll see picture books, and he has these bins, and so you'll see lots of picture books, and some of them have green stickers on them, and some of them have blue stickers on them, so, and red, and whatever the other color was. And so when people come in and say, hi, I'm looking for ABC books, what he can do is go through his small collection and just look for the books that have red on them, and just find them really quickly, pull out the ones that are ABCs and hand them over. Rather than reorganizing his entire collection, he just kind of highlighted those. And that's something you can totally do. Just because you are coding them or classifying them doesn't mean that you have to move them. And I think this is something that I want you to think about. So he hasn't moved these books at all. They're still in big bins. They're still in alphabetical order. They're still all together. So now you can find books multiple ways. You can find them in alphabetical order. So if you know the author's name, you're looking for Jen Brett, you look for the B's and you find them, and kids learn their alphabetizing skills and their letters that way. Great. Fabulous. If you just want to browse, you can definitely do that. Or if you really want a certain topic, you can look for those labels. The other thing is that if kids find a book that they really like and it has a green sticker on it, they know that those books with green stickers might also be books that they like. So they work a little bit like genre stickers, which he also uses, and you can, so kids can identify them, but they don't have to go anywhere special. So he hasn't had to retrain his patrons. That's one thing that I talked to Kathy about at length, and you'll hear in her interview, is that you have to retrain your patrons when you reorganize the library like this. It takes time, and sometimes some people are really resistant to it. Some communities are really excited for this kind of change. Some are not. And you know that there are some patrons who are going to love it and some patrons who are really going to hate it. And you have to ease them into it. And so in the beginning, you might have to have big signs. You might have to have little, introduction sections to talk to them about how do you use the new library, what is this new stuff, and then as they get used to it, it'll get easier. I think Kathy rolled this out in the spring right before summer reading, and so it actually worked really well, and people were pretty pleased. But like I said, it depends on your community. And Thad took, this different route, and in his library, I don't think it would have worked very well to actually physically separate them because he doesn't have a lot of space. So he uses those kind of bins in the middle of the room. He doesn't have any of the books on shelves where you can see the spines. So I'm not sure how. You could have one bin per section, I guess, but some of those bins would be really full, and some of them wouldn't. But that's something else that you'll see if you listen to Janet from Manchester. One of the things she pointed out is that her circulation went up a lot when she moved her books. And one of the ones that I wasn't thinking about, but I thought is the folklore section. People talk about the folklore section and pulling them out of the nonfiction, because it is a little ridiculous that fables and folklore and folk tales are all in nonfiction. Pulling them out of that and putting them with picture books makes your circulation explode. And she's talked about how, her books are going out, books that people have never read before are suddenly going out. And same things with songs and rhymes. Those books, she said, have circulated like crazy. The other thing she points out, which I think is interesting, is that she was able to do some more precise collection development when she separated books into sections like this. Now, there's something to be said, anytime you do a reorganization or a massive weed or, shelf reading or whatever, you get your hands on the books, and so then you start to see what you have and you can do some more precise collection development. So maybe that's part of it. But when you put them into sections like this, it becomes glaringly obvious that, the environment section is huge, but the rhymes and psalm sections is small, or that your transportation section is really tattered, or that your books on nature are really old or whatever. So you're able to get this really good visual picture of your collection, and you can really spot, okay, this year I'm going to put money into, transportation books because those are looking really tired and I need to put more books over there. Or we have enough truck books, we've got to put some more books over here. So she really, I think that's something to be said. But like I said, it could just be the, residual effects of reorganizing anything, getting to touch all those books. All right, so that's how a lot of people have done it here in Vermont. I want to point out a bunch of resources to you. We're going to end a little bit early today, but I'm going to give you all an hour and a half of time because I would love for you all to look at these videos. One right here is a VLA presentation. If you were not able to go to VLA, Nancy Daigle from Thatcher Brook, I think it's a primary school, and Jessica Summer and Amanda Perry from Winooski. Now, they have a very small library too, and they did an entire reorganization. And these are their slides and pictures from their presentation, and they talk a lot about the process of how do you do all of this. There's a video of Thad from Deborah Rawson and explaining his section and what he did and why. There's a video of Kathy with more updated pictures. The reason I didn't take pictures is because I was doing a video of her. And you can see her entire section at work. And then Janet from Manchester talks a lot about her section and why it works for her. And actually, let me just pull this one up. Let me see if it'll let me do it. My computer's been a little weird lately. All right, so I'm going to pull up the presentation from Winooski. I don't know why it's taking so long. Hold on a sec. All right, while I'm fighting with my computer, does anyone have any questions? Yes, I'm going to send everyone, Rebecca was asking if the resources were on the website. Yes, absolutely. I'm going to send every single one of you copies of the slide and links to this recording, and all of it's together along with all the videos, and you can look at everything that we talked about today. So you'll be able to access all of it, share it with your directors, and if you have friends or some of the people who signed up who weren't able to make it today, everyone can watch it, and we can have discussions about it. I know that if you are a school librarian, they will be talking about this at the fall conference as well. And if you're going to the ASRL conference in Manchester, that they will be talking about that then as well. So I don't know what my computer just did. Sometimes computers are just silly. Let me show you where all these resources are. All right, so here's the Dumping Dewey page that I was showing you in the very beginning. If you click on this, you will get, this is the presentation that they did for VLA. Thatcher Brook is a primary school, so it's a little bit different. But there's a lot of information about, they actually did a survey from the kids, which is hilarious and adorable. And you can see what they did with the children to make this an easier space. And these are some of the questions that kids were asking, and it's very similar to the questions you guys get in the public library. They want books about snakes. They want books about kitties. Where are the spooky books? You know, we all get those questions. I want princess books. Oh, that one drives me crazy. And then she had a really good example of, all these books are everywhere. And so they use something called Metis, which is what they used here. So they separated everything into sections. Now, this is a school library. It's a fairly large school library, and they incorporated things that you may not want to incorporate, including beginning fiction, memoir, verse. That's not how I would do it, but I'm not a school librarian. So this is all about how much it cost, which is pretty low, which is very nice. Okay, here's the one I wanted to show you. So this is Winooski. They have very small staff. You can see that, one director and one half-time librarian or part-time librarian, and then a clerk. And their collection is not enormous. So they wanted to reorganize this, and I want to show you. So they did something called Dewey Lights, and a lot of, you're going to hear those phrases being thrown around a lot. Dewey Light, Dewey Hybrid. All it means really is that somebody took Dewey and tweaked it for their own purposes. So either added some quality of a bookstore model or added something from this Darien, Connecticut model, but didn't do it entirely, keep some of Dewey and just kind of tweaked it. So these are the concepts, these are the little sections that they used. Then she broke out the All About Me section into these different sections. Now, every community is different. You know, who knows, your community may not need all of these breakouts, but for her, she really needed these. And in my experience, they're pretty handy so that you can easily, especially if you have someone subbing for you or a volunteer trying to find something, you can easily find the new baby books and the potty training books without tearing your hair out. So this is kind of how it would look in library world. And this is, here we go. This is their space and how they did it. So what they ended up doing was using these different shelving units. And this is what it looked like in the process of taking every single book off the shelf and looking at all of them. Now, with a staff of less than 3 people, which many of you have, this is something to consider. This takes a long time. It's a lot of manpower, and it's a mess. And as soon as you have a huge stack of books on your table and you're elbow deep into labels, some kid's going to come up to you and want, a dinosaur book and a puppet and everything else, and is going to sneeze on you too. So it's not an easy project. But however, this is how it ended up going. She got really creative with her space. As you can see, she doesn't have a lot of shelf space. This is the entire library. And so, for example, this is one section here. I think this is the transportation section. And she got some little cute bookends, and so that's their whole section right there. So it's nothing fancy. And so some of these sections, like this right here, is all one section, and this right here is all one section. And then she moved some of these other ones, the emerging readers and the easy readers, and she broke them up into series, which is something else we'll talk about later. And so she did her fiction as well, which again is something I hesitate about doing, but everyone's different. And so she looked at the genre of her fiction books, and she broke them up like this.
I guess. So yes.
So these are the categories.
We'll be ordering it. Yeah, that was a good book. It was very good. I love Mopson's here.
Cheryl?
Yes, very soon. Okay.
I can hear your conversation going on.
Sorry.
That's okay. All right, so these are the categories she used, and she used some stickers from traditional sources like Demco and Gaylord, but you can see that some of them she had to make her own, and she just printed these off. Things like making stuff, and I think this is Our World and Our Community. But some of these stickers are really cute, and you can get pre-made, no problem. This is a little bit about changing the catalog record, which only applies to you if you use Library World, but if you do, you can definitely look at this, and I can put you in touch with Jessica if you need specific questions. So this is how it worked. She spent 2 days sorting things, 3 weeks of cataloging, and then 2 months of kind of shifting and organizing and trying to figure out where everything had to go. So this is what the mess looked like. I'm not a big fan of mess, but it's pretty appealing because look at that, how amazing it looks afterwards. And this is how much it costs. And I know a lot of people worry about this. She did order new shelving, which isn't necessary in every library. Most of the cost is going to come down to labels and manpower. So you're going to have to catalog things. You're going to have to reorganize things. It takes time. And then you're going to have to buy some stickers. Stickers are not free unless, you have a whole bunch somewhere. You never know. But she did end up buying a bunch. So it's a bit of money. And so you can take a look through this and see what you think. In all, everyone has really good things to say about the results. Winooski also did their adult section, and if you see this, they used existing stickers as well, and they used categories that are similar to Manchester, so self-help, finance, things like that, and they also did the genre labeling. So they did everything. So if you're ever in Winooski, it's definitely worth looking at this. But like I said, Jessica is presenting several times, so she has lots of good information, and I can put you in touch with her if you have specific questions. So there's tons of resources here as well. But this page here, which I will remind you how to get to, so libraries.vermont.gov, services for Vermont libraries, and then you want children and teens either here or in the middle, and then you go to Youth Services Toolkit. Everything is super easy. Right here under Continuing Education, there are the self-paced learning modules. If you click on Dumping Dewey, I promise in the next few hours I will put slides and the recording of this session right here, along with all of these other resources. I highly recommend that you listen to these. These are very short, less than 5 minutes. Listen to these little interviews with your colleagues and see what you think. Each one of them has something different to say. And I think that if you pick and choose advice from each one of them and from all of the different things we've been talking about today, you can come up with something that works in your library. Now down here, these are articles from national sources. So these are this is the slides from Marion, Connecticut, talking about their massive reorganization projects, and then some other articles about from other libraries about how to do this and why. And this one right here is specifically about the Dewey hybrid model, which is similar to Dewey Light, which is a lot of the things we've been talking about, and then some pictures of cute signs, because we all need cute signs in the children's room because that's how we roll. All right, so questions, comments, ideas? You guys are very quiet. Okay.
I have a question, Sharon.
Tell me.
About some have pulled the authors out. Is that appropriate?
Pulling authors out?
Like Eric Carle books.
Yes. Some do. Where that usually ends up going is in the favorite section. So I was talking to you about, here we go. If you look at these sections, Eric Carle usually ends up under favorites, and it's totally up to you. It could go under favorites, it could go under stories. My advice to you is as long as you're consistent and as long as you have definitions under each of your sections, really think about, what are the rules? What are the rules for what goes in this section? And that will make your life easier. So if you have a list of authors that go under favorites, that's cool. You choose the list of authors that you think should go there. But in general, yeah, Eric Carle ends up in the favorite section.
And do you have to put the whole collection into categories, or can you just have 5 categories?
You can do whatever you want. Like I was pointing out with Deborah Rawson, they only did a couple of categories. I also worked in a library where what we did was we had sub-collections. So we did what SAG did, where we identified 4 sections, like transportation and what was the other one we pulled out? Oh, dinosaurs and ABC. And those books just were flying off the shelves. So what we ended up doing is pulling them out and shelving them separately. So we had this cute little bookshelf that said, transportation, and we just shoved all the transportation books there. And we didn't do anything else, no other categorization. So you could do that, definitely. You could do what Thad did in Jericho, and you can choose a couple of sections that you like, label them for easy access, and leave them on the shelf, or you can pull them. It's totally up to you. So Rebecca has another question. She wonders about crossover books. How do you decide where to categorize them? Stories with animals, stories with nature? Yeah, that is the burning question of all of this, and that's something I urge you to think about. It really depends on your collection, and this is where I worry about things like genre labeling, whereas little kids don't really care what the stickers are on the books. Older kids do. But yeah, animal stories, where do you put them? And you have to decide that. You're going to have to put together some definitions, like, animals supersede everything else. So if it's about animals, it goes into animals first. And then stories is everything that's about everything else. Or maybe your story section has a rule that it's only about people. And every library is going to be a little bit different. So it's possible that you might have, I don't know, under growing up, maybe you don't put the potty training books there. Maybe you move the potty training books somewhere else. You have to think really hard about that. And, part of being a librarian is thinking about these categories and really defining them. And I would advise you to really come up with some firm definitions of what goes where, or else you're going to drive yourself crazy. And also start with a smaller section. Like Helen is talking about, maybe you only start with a couple of categories, and that is fine. Start maybe with transportation. I'm a big fan of the truck books because everyone loves truck books. So grab the transportation books, and maybe you make them all red, and maybe that'll help people find them. The whole idea is you want to make it easy to access. You don't want to make it more difficult. So whatever is going to make it easier for you is great. So you just want to be consistent and don't drive yourself crazy. Angel wants to know how long we should wait to watch the video. It's going to take me a little while to upload this video onto YouTube. YouTube can be a little cranky sometimes, so, give me an hour or so. I will send out an email, don't worry. You can go and watch the videos of your colleagues right now. Go right ahead. But I will post this very soon if you want to hear my voice over and over again, because I know everyone does. I feel like this is just a lot of me talking. Does anyone else have any questions, comments, concerns? I don't want anyone.
I have another question. So
yeah, tell me.
Okay, so take nature. So would you separate them in all the categories, group those books together, or they would all be nature?
Good question. It's up to you. What I've seen mostly done is that you probably don't have that much nature fiction in picture books. So those can probably go in alphabetical order. And you probably, in your library, you may have 20 books, and they go right there in alphabetical order. And then you have your nonfiction, if you have nonfiction picture books, and those you would keep in the Dewey Numbers. So you would grab the 500 section on nature and keep them in the Dewey Numbers so that they stay near each other. So that the, spider books end up near the spider books, and, the butterfly books end up near the butterfly books. You know what I mean? And if you just separate them with a sign or a bookend or whatever, that will keep you from losing your mind. You can separate the fiction if you want to. In a library your size, Helena, I would hesitate to do that. See what happens. Go through your collection and see how many nature books you really have that are fiction and picture books. I bet you don't have that many. Most of them are probably nonfiction. That's my guess anyway. But yeah, if anyone has specific questions, or if you're going crazy and you just need someone to talk to, that's my job. Please contact me anytime. I'm happy to help. My contact information is all over the place on the website, but let me make sure that I pull it up for you. Of course, it's never on the page that I'm looking at, right? Here we go. Okay, there's my contact information right here. My phone number, I'm not always in the office, but you can send me an email anytime. I'll pull it up for you right here, sharon.colvin@vermont.gov, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. I can also put you in touch with other people who have been going through this. And if you want another web chat, or if you want to hook up with other people, please let me know. I'm happy to try to connect you with other folks. So are there any more questions? Okay, so for now, we're going to end. I urge you to go to the toolkit and watch those interviews with your colleagues, see what they have to say. I will upload this video as soon as humanly possible, and I will email that out to you, and the slides as well. You can see the slides, and you will have all the information you need. If you have any questions, please let me know. And if that's it, I hope that you all have a fantastic day.
Thank you, Sharon, very much.
You are
very helpful.
so very welcome.